Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Town Talk here at the Town of Stephenville Chamber. And joining me today, I have Linda Collier and Maurice Hynes, Councillor Hynes, who are involved with the Stephenville Regional Museum. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So first of all, I want to thank you guys for joining me here today. And we're trying to focus a lot on the tourism events and tourism places that people can come and visit this summer and take in while they're here in Stephenville, and even for residents of Stephenville and surrounding areas who may not know all that is to offer. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the history of the museum. Who wants to talk about the history?
Well, I'll start with that because I was here before Maurice.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we sort of myself and Debbie Patton actually got together back around 2009, 2010, and we started talking about the need for a museum here. And so I don't know how we started. We just got started, and we put feelers out there, and we got people who were interested in being a part of it. And we held some workshops to see, what we would want this museum to look like. And we got a lot of input from community. So we got together in 2010. We didn't have a home, so eventually we were able to obtain the downstairs of the Legion. So Maurice can pick up from there.
Yes. Well, that was sort of interesting because we were sort of operating the upstairs and downstairs, which became quite a task. And we finally decided that maybe we should move everything upstairs in the Legion. And then opportunity, we had someone who was going to come in and rent the downstairs space, and it was a historical group. So we signed an MOU, and we've been working together as partners with a lot of projects because there is some overlap in some of the things that we do. For example, when people come to visit the museum, lots of times we include a visit to upstairs to visit the memorial wall, which was just completed, and a little bit of story of the Legion itself that goes back to 1949 when it was a construction workers' mess hall. And it was only after the base construction had ended in 58, 59 did they decide that they would turn it into the officers' open mess.
Wow, that is an interesting history for sure. And actually, I wasn't aware of all that either. So thank you for that, Maurice. And for somebody who hasn't been at the museum before, what can they expect when they walk inside? What's the first thing for them to see?
Well, there's a bit of everything. It's sort of an eclectic collection of the past. We've got an old schoolroom back from the 40s. We've got Joey Smallwood, of course, and the Queen on the wall and all this stuff. We've got an old-fashioned parlor, kitchen, bedroom. We have a stove there that dates to 1856, came from Sandy Point. And actually, that's kind of interesting because my cousin ended up with this stove and took it to Nova Scotia. And when he found out that I was involved in starting the museum, he offered to bring it back. So we've got this old kitchen stove that has the oven in the back, and it's really interesting. So we've got that. Then we go on and we've got the American base thing. We have a whole exhibit on that. We've got mannequins. One set of mannequins depicts man and wife who was a forces officer, or what was he?
It was an NCO.
NCO, okay.
Non-commissioned officer.
Yeah, and a bride. So she's dressed in her bridal outfit from the 50s. And then we go on. We've got a military, Canadian military. We've got Palestine.
Yes, we have uniforms from the 1940s, some memorabilia from the First World War, and then we have some current uniforms from the 60s and 70s, and even some people who retired, I guess, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So we have a complete military corner.
Mm-hmm.
So where did all of these artifacts come from?
My basement.
all the military, except my German war helmet.
Except for the German helmet, yes.
Yeah. Actually,
Wow.
that's an interesting story. I was visiting my uncle one time, and he lives on the East Coast in Trinity Bay. And so he was out in the field, and I was talking to him, and I saw this thing on the ground, and it was full of rusty nails, and it was a German helmet. So I have no idea how he got it, but somebody
and how
must have
long it was
brought.
there, obviously.
I don't know. Somebody brought it back from overseas, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
Well, one of the other artifacts is the World War I rifle,
yeah,
okay, which is donated by the Shears family.
yeah.
Okay, John Robert Shears, who served in Gallipoli, Beaumont Hamel, Goudencourt, survived the war and came home, brought it home with him. One of the unique things about the rifle is on the butt plate, it has NFLD, so it was issued to the Royal Newfoundland Regiment.
Wow.
So it's a sort of unique thing to have.
Yeah, yeah. So that's on display.
Interesting. So you have all of these interesting artifacts there, and I was looking at your brochure here, and just the things like the French ancestry section. You've got an Aboriginal section.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, even Maurice and I were talking a little while ago, like the Georgian newspapers.
Yes, we were lucky to obtain them when the Georgian closed. Yeah.
And like the military crash sites as well.
Well, yes. Well, of course, with the base being here, there was a number of crashes. A couple took place actually over Base St. George itself, and one of the military aircraft just exploded in the air, and no bodies were ever recovered. Just some pieces of the aircraft. Probably the most interesting one is the commemorating Crash Hill. It was called Hare Hill, and it was in 1946, and the war was over. And a group of civilians and dependents were flying to Germany to meet up with their partners, and people from DuPont and Coca-Cola were going to go over and help rebuild the economy. At the time, the airport never had the signal lights as we have today, and it wasn't as high-tech. Mm-hmm. The aircraft took off on, I believe it was an October morning.
I think so.
And instead of turning to the right, it was very foggy, turned to the left and crashed into Hare Hill. At that point in time, it was the major air disaster ever. Women, children, some military personnel. They rushed up to try to recover the bodies, but of course they were so badly burned, they did improvised graves right there. And the crosses can still be seen up there. And so the whole history of that flight is there, and the impact that it had on the community. That's one of the many
yes,
crash
and
sites.
we have one of the crosses that have been replaced, one of the original ones. We have one on display in the museum.
Wow, so you certainly have a lot of history in the museum, and I know that a museum is meant to have history, but with every piece of history that you have there, there's a story to go along with it.
Yeah, and one of the stories about the crash site was after it was difficult to get up there. There is a hiking trail there now for those who want to go up to Crash Hill and view the site. Okay?
It's not easy.
It's not easy. But however, because it was so difficult to get up, several months after, there was a Catholic priest, a padre, there was a Jewish rabbi, and a Protestant padre. They flew over and they blessed all the graves.
Wow.
So that was sort of a unique thing to happen at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
One of the interesting ones that I find is the map of Stephenville. The
one on the table?
The one on the table.
Yeah.
It's at 1925?
Yes. 1925.
Yeah. And, of course, it depicts the back of the pond and all of the properties that were owned and by what families. So an awful lot of the people in Stephenville can trace that back to their grandparents and great-grandparents. The other interesting part is that if you look at where the property of Kippens is located, you'll see narrow strips of land, probably 25 of them. It's very similar to Quebec, that if a family member got married, then that piece of land would be shared, but they needed to have some part on the water for fishing, another part on the land for farming, and going farther back, probably several miles for logging.
Wow.
And if you went to sea, you would probably see the name like bourgeois, and you would see probably 5 narrow strips of land. So each son that got married inherited a piece of land. A little bit of thing to look at.
Yeah, the map stretches from the Gravels right through to Stephenville Crossing.
Wow, I didn't realize that was there either. Yeah. So generally, if somebody comes in for a tour of the museum, I guess you have tour guides there in the summertime, but how long does it generally take for somebody if they want to spend and
you could spend hours there if you wanted to and still not see everything. In addition to what you can actually see, we've got digital photos, and of course there's tons of those, and there's a lot. There's a lot. You need more than one visit.
Yeah, because as you look at each one, especially if some of the guides are there, for example, there's a section on Sandy Point. And that part in itself has some pictures of Sandy Point, some of the artifacts, because Sandy Point from the early 1860s, actually, when the first settlers were there, on through until the last family left, I guess was 1972, had a very unique history. It was the center for education, for government, and actually the Mercy Sisters came up from the States, and they developed the first convent on Sandy Point to help teach the children. So it has a very unique story in itself.
Yeah. Of course, that changed once the railway came through and people started moving.
That's right. Yeah, they started moving to St. George's, and Sandy Point, which was called Flat Island, also had probably two significant floods. One, I believe, in the 1920s and another one in the 50s, and carried away some livestock, some property, but the connection from Sandy Point to the mainland got washed away. So that was one of the other issues why people started moving.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there's a schoolroom at the museum as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
We've got an old desk, and we've got a bell, and we've got, I don't know how many school desks. I think there's 5 of them.
5 of them, yes.
Different, the old-fashioned thing, but you put your books underneath. And we've got a big display on the wall that houses all kinds of old books, old school books from way back, right? They even had them as old as I am. When
they're
I
not
was in
that
grade
back
4.
far there. I can remember them. Sort of not that far.
Yeah, go back to Dick and Jane.
Yeah.
And
I noticed that aside from just the museum, like you've done some interesting events at the museum itself as well.
We have, yes. A few years ago, we started doing a night at the museum, and that was kind of interesting. We had different acting, different people depicting. Actually, we had Mariah Cobham from Sandy Point.
Right.
And we've had Dave Rex there doing Victor Campbell. And who else? We've had...
We've done a number of...
Yeah. And of course, now the one we're working on now is a Sandy Point one, and that'll be our next event, but we were supposed to do it this summer. That's sort of been postponed.
Yep.
But yeah, we've been busy, and then every May we usually have our tea. This year we changed it up a little bit and did a rock and roll event, which was fun.
I saw that. We were actually out of town at the time that happened, but I saw the pictures and it looked like it was so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, they had a ball.
And then we did the TV characters.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Another time. So everybody got in costume. And
was that from like old sitcoms or?
Yes, a number of.
He was Jed Clampett.
And I was Jed, and Sis was Granny.
Really?
We came with our shotguns and with our jugs of...
They were perfect.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, so authentic.
Yeah. We
I was
fun.
Dolly Parton, but somebody beat me out on it. There was another one.
But it's how fun though, just to get in character and have an evening.
Yeah, because we started out with those actually back in 2012 when we did move into the museum. We started out doing the teas, and so we used to do the royal teas and different things. So we said, well, we need Jane. We used to have a lot of models modeling wedding dresses or different outfits, and
interesting for a nice night out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, usually it would be a Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Maurice, I know like you're a veteran, and as you've mentioned, the museum is in the Royal Canadian Legion, in the basement of the Legion. So that must be, to have that history and to have it at the Legion, it must be just so surreal.
Well, it is, because it's part and parcel of our history. Like I said, if you go down, you see artifacts there from the First World War, and of course the Royal Newfoundland Regiment and the service that they did. We get to see the 1940s, the war years, not only Canada's participation, but also the American influence there as well. And then upstairs, we recently completed, Linda was on the committee, we redid our memorial wall. And it's
It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's quite well done. We have all the pictures there: First World War, Second World War, Korea, and those recent soldiers that passed away in other conflicts.
And everything is
everything is
digitized.
digitized. So we're going to make sure nothing gets lost. So that was a part that we did. And of course the upstairs, as I mentioned earlier, the history of the so-called Legion as being the construction workers' mess hall. Then from 1952 to 58, when we had the big expansion, they needed a place to put construction workers to feed them, because they hired a little over 2,500 Newfoundlanders to come to work on the expansion of the base. That's when the manor was built, and the other residents alongside of it, hospital, gymnasiums, and the road was built, going by Gull Pond. So that was a 6-7 years of expansion. So that's tied into the museum as well. And with the cultural destinations, the number of people we had 2 or 3 weeks ago, 40.
Oh, we had a tour group in. This is probably the 4th year we've done that. They come in, they're sort of promoting tourism, but they're from the States and from mostly Ontario and Quebec, and most of them are from the States, probably about 85% of them. And so they come in and they get a taste of, what the Newfoundland food is like, and they get their tour of the base and tour of the museum. And you were on the tour. I think you did part of the tour. And Bill Pilgrim, he was on the tour. So different, everybody's input on it. And then they came back to the Legion and they ate. We had a variety of foods for them, from fish cakes to
homemade baked beans to different buns and jams. And,
a bit of everything. And an old-fashioned Newfoundland dessert with your sauce on it. And so that's interesting. And then we had the Harmon family come this year. And, of course, because of the politics, we didn't advertise, because we would have loved to have gone bigger with it. But it was the grandchildren of Ernest Harmon, who the base is named after. And they had never been to Newfoundland before.
Well, what brought them? Just to see the history?
They contacted us a year ago and said they'd like to come and see, where the base, their grandfather was never here, but the base was named after him. So they came, they brought a lot of history, a lot of information, and a huge picture of Ernest Harmon, because apparently he flew around the rim of the United States, so he was a famous pilot. So that one I have in Cornbrook now being framed so we can properly display it.
Wow.
And they were very interested. They contacted us after and said how pleased they were. And,
very nice.
We got the best bus to take them on a tour after.
Excellent. Wow.
Yeah. So as a matter of fact, the mayor was there greeting them. They said we keep it low key because of the politics at the time.
Yeah.
Some people are overwhelmed with the politics of the politicians and not the people themselves. That's important. Yeah. But it was quite good.
Yes. We didn't mention any politics whatsoever.
No, we didn't.
Just a good old Newfoundland visit.
That's right.
Exactly.
So they were quite moved by. They were expecting to come and just say hi. This is Ernest Harmon.
Yeah.
And then they had the tour. They had the meal. They got to meet people. They got to meet people who worked on the base. So it was a really nice connection with them.
For sure. And I bet you they will be back.
Oh, I think so.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I think
definitely.
They will. One thing I neglected to mention about our American exhibit is that we have the flag that was taken down at the Harmon headquarters building when base closed.
Yeah, the last flag.
Yeah. And that's on display.
And that's also on display.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the story behind
it
is, I'll tell the story.
Yes.
When they had the last flag was being flown, those people know how the Americans feel about their flag. The flag came down. Mr. Percy Piraway, who was the probably town or maybe even the government representative at the time, he was there. Flag came down. There were several colonels there, the military police. There's actually a picture of the military police taking the flag down, and it's folded properly in a triangle. The military police were there, and 2 colonels were waiting. And they said, well, I guess they want to be saluted. They passed it to Percy. They saluted the colonels, and the colonels got in a vehicle and drove away, and so did the military police. And Percy's holding the flag, and he says, oh, my. So he went home, and
With
as
the
each
flag.
day went by, he hid it under his bed for a while
Yeah.
because he wasn't sure what to do with it because he was going to be arrested. But as time went by, he came to see a town manager, Barry Coates. He said, Barry, this is the last flag flown at Harmon. Normally, they take it back with them,
Right.
and it goes into a museum or belong to some branch of the Air Force.
Mm.
And he said, if there ever is a museum, I think the flag belongs there and flown.
Seems like the most appropriate place
Oh,
for
yes. Yeah. It's on display.
So when we did our first friendly invasion,
Mm-hmm.
2014, I think,
Yes.
we had the
50.
flag flown upstairs because we had a number of Americans who came home for the event.
Mm.
So it's sort of an interesting story in itself. But we also have pictures there of Jane Mansfield, Marilyn Monroe,
Yes.
Bob Hope,
Frank
Buster-
Sinatra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Elvis.
USO shows they would tour all around the bases, so they were here, and of course Elvis was here. And the interesting part, a friend of ours went down to Graceland, and they mentioned about Elvis being in Stephenville. They have no idea about it. Even
Really?
Elvis Historical Group,
Wow.
Yeah.
because Elvis was a sergeant in the Army, and he was flying back home, I believe it was, and he did a stop over here. So he stopped and made himself well known, even if he didn't want to. And so we have some pictures of Elvis here on the base.
Wow. And they're in the museum as well.
They're in the museum as well.
Yeah.
Wow. So lots of famous names, famous people have passed through this area back when the
Well,
base
that's
was
right.
open.
Okay. Well, it was because it was called the Paradise of the North. Because if you look at the buildings on the base now,
Mm-hmm.
imagine in 1954 coming to one of those apartments, hardwood floors, bathroom and a half, you name it. That was set of high standards. Golf course, gymnasium, bowling alley, theater, carpentry club for hobbies, a mechanical club, arts and craft club. There was Boy Scouts. Then there was a hunting lodge. And out on Grand Lake.
Yeah.
That's right. So for them, and the White House in Corner Brook, if you wanted to go in and stay overnight, the White House was in Corner Brook. So indeed, it was the Paradise of the North for people who were coming here.
Yeah, certainly sounds like it for sure. So if somebody, I know the museum generally is open this time of the year during tourism season. So what days of the week, what hours can people?
Right now, starting this week, we're open right on through daily because we have 2 students. We had one started for the first 2 weeks, so we weren't open on the weekends. But now that we have 2 of them, we're open on weekends. And then the last 2 weekends in August, we won't be open again. So it's only while we have the 2 that we can open all the time.
And generally, what are the hours?
The hours are from 10 o'clock until 4:30.
Okay. Yeah. And I would imagine there's an admission fee?
Yes, it's $5.
Okay.
And under 6 and under, it's free.
Right.
And students, it's $3.
Excellent. And of course, doesn't matter if you come in and you spend 30 minutes or you spend 3 hours.
Yeah.
No.
You will get your $5 worth for sure.
And some people just want to come in and look, and some people will want a full tour. We have one person with us this year. This is his 3rd year, so he's very knowledgeable.
Excellent. And just for somebody who might have, a little bit of a mobility issue, is there any steps or is it?
We're not there yet.
No,
okay.
No, we're working on that.
Okay, so there are a few steps when you go into the museum.
Yes, when you come back to the museum, I think coming through the back door of the museum, there's 4 steps, I think. Maybe 5.
The little one. And then there's
4.
more.
And then there's a little platform. Then there's more, a couple of more.
Yeah.
And I noticed you guys also have a Facebook page.
We do.
That you've been sharing some photos and things on. So is that just under Stephenville Regional Museum, I believe?
Yes, if you just Google Stephenville Museum, you'll find it. Yeah.
So what do you think the most interesting exhibit you have in the museum is? I'll ask you each.
Oh, my.
If there's one thing...
Well, he's going to say the military because all his things
all my things are there. Sis said you got to put them somewhere. I still got some at home. Well, matter of fact, that part was interesting because we had how many 100 students come in?
Oh, my goodness. Yes, the Remembrance Day.
For Remembrance Week. So we had a display upstairs where we built a bunker out of sandbags filled with sawdust, of course.
Yeah.
Then we had a display of some photos, that Gary did. And then they came downstairs and I introduced them to some of the old equipment. And then they were allowed to visit everything. And they had nothing but questions. They were really amazed. I'm trying to remember how many hundreds we had.
I don't know. They started at grade 3, 4?
Grade 3, we had 4 classes of grade 3s, 4 classes of grade 4s. And the one amazing group was the class of grade 9s. They were so quiet, so respectful throughout the whole program. It was wonderful. We're doing it again, but we're going to turn it into a grade 3, 6, and 9 program, and we're going to incorporate other things within the museum as well as with the military thing for Remembrance Week, so that there will be programs suitable for grade 3s, a program suitable for grade 6s and grade 9s. So by the time they have completed high school, they have had the experience, the historical one of each grade level. Because the artifacts are there. It's a different way to teach it, and we can show it, and they can touch it and then look at it. It's a whole different venue of presentation.
Yeah, and that's amazing because a lot of times if you go into a museum type place, the first thing you'll see is signs saying, don't touch.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why they love it. I know one of my friends, her grandchildren came home one year from Ontario, and they went around. She was a little girl, probably about 8 or 10. And so she could touch everything. She was fascinated, right? And she said, Nana, we're not allowed to do that in Ontario.
Yeah. So the military one I find fascinating. Of course, during Remembrance Week, I was sort of an amateur collector, so I started collecting uniforms from the First World War, Second World War, Black Watch uniform with the kilts and the hairsporn. So I was interested in it, and I just bought it at Army surplus stores. And then the last purchase I was about to make, the guy said, "We don't have any of those anymore." I said, but I was looking for, a gas mask and that. And he said, an American company and bought up all of the uniforms that we had that was Canadian Forces prior to 1966.
Oh, wow.
A lot of movie companies use them.
Oh,
as
so
props and
if you look
costume.
at the movie 1917, of course, they had to be realistic. So they take them and reenactors and they make them authentic as to wear. So that's one of the reasons why I can't purchase anymore.
But your basement you must have so much space now.
Yes, I do.
Well, we don't.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
No.
So the museum itself, I know that, do you have a group of volunteers who takes care of it, who runs it, who decides things and dates and whatnot?
Yeah, we have a wonderful group of volunteers. The only problem is that we're all old and we're hoping to get some new blood, but it's very difficult to get volunteers.
They're going to have us mounted and stuffed and put in the museum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, though, this program that you're doing with the schools, by bringing in the grades 3s and the grade 6s and the grade 9s, gauging that interest, I think you're going to see that that's going to be actually an opportunity to bring some young blood, as we'll say, into volunteering.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a whole different part because those people who live, say, in the St. John's area have advantage to the rooms and several other museums. And there's small community ones about. And really, we're, I think, the only museum probably in Bay St. George. There may be a small display
I think
somewhere.
Down on the peninsula,
yes,
there's
maybe a couple of small displays.
Specific to like the schoolhouse.
Yes, that's right.
Yes,
and
they,
right?
and
I
they
think
sort of specify where we've got a bit of everything.
Yeah, we have a bit of
exactly.
everything.
Yes, I don't know of any others that has a full variety of all of these different places and artifacts. And
one of the amazing things when the students were there, there's a collection from the telephone company, and they said, "Oh my God, pick up this telephone. Feel how heavy it is."
You aren't texting on those
No,
phones.
that's right.
Yeah.
And they realized that
And the dials.
Yeah, they found it hard to dial. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and I would imagine even my son is 20, and I think that even for him to see like a rotary dial phone now would probably be new to him.
Is this?
Exactly.
Or the question, what's a phone book?
What's a phone book?
So
you mean you don't Google?
No. So there's a whole number of things. The interesting part, of course, I like the military ones because we have a whole uniform, and each part of the uniform, we have wire cutters, we have mess tins, canteens, respirators, putties, entrenching tools, shell dressings, a whole number of things. So for the military side, that's there. But I think each section, like if you look at Sandy Point, there's a whole story there within itself.
Mm-hmm.
And even like the telephone company, and the first computers were there. Gilbert Higgins. The Gilbert Higgins collection.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. And those who knew Gilbert, and you could tell that story, and it would take quite a bit of time for what an interesting character he was.
I interviewed Gilbert Higgins when I worked with CFSEC.
Okay.
And he was just full of information. I don't think there was anything that he did not know. He was such an amazing historian.
Gilbert was my history teacher in grade 10 and 11.
I could sit down and just listen to him telling the stories for hours. It was amazing.
There's that whole collection of things, and there's a music collection, and then there's a Lloyd Pretty collection.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
Lloyd's wife Daphne contacted me and said, I have some things of Lloyd's after he passed away, and two of his paintings actually that he did not finish. So we have those on display. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And people all across Canada, all across the world know Lloyd Pretty and his paintings.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But one of the other things, just from time to time, somebody will call you or call me in the off season that someone is visiting and they'd like to come and visit. So we do that as well. Yeah, we do that as well.
And obviously with the schools too, if there are any schools in the area who might be interested in getting involved, I'm sure they can reach out.
Yes. No, I think that'd be really good. Part of the social studies program, then it becomes a living program.
Exactly.
Yes,
not just in a textbook.
Yeah. First, when we started, we used to get a few school groups come in every now and then. We've had Boy Scouts and Girl Guides come in from time to time. And we've got boxes of stuff that belong to Boy Scouts and Girl Guides that we have nowhere to display. Right. Yeah. But what we do from time to time is set up a special display. Right now, I'm working on one that depicts the naval officers on the West Coast. And it goes back to, again, Victor Campbell and Bickerton and Major Douglas Wise. So there's a lot of information there that never been discussed, really. And I know this because I grew up on one of the farms. And so they had come here years ago and settled along the river. It was mostly they came here for salmon fishing and hunting and stuff. So they didn't pay very much for the land. I think probably $1 or something for 400 acres of land. And so my connection to it is that my father was manager of one farm, and I had 3 uncles who managed the other farms.
Oh, wow.
So it was.
And each of those captains we find them in history.
Yeah.
They did fantastic things, going to the Arctic where they sailed, what they did, and stories of survival.
Yeah.
Of being marooned for months. And
9 months in a snow cave.
Wow.
Victor Campbell and his
crew. Yeah.
But that got forgotten because it was when Scott was on the same expedition, but he went a different route, and they were supposed to meet up, but then Scott died, and
and that became the story.
So that was a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's many stories, and the interconnection that's there is amazing, and I think if someone goes down there, especially somebody maybe who's moved away about 2 weeks ago, I guess before we opened. Somebody wanted to come and see a picture of their grandfather, who they knew was a World War I veteran. They're living in New York now, but they came and they found a picture, and they had the story, and then, of course, we took them to the museum. So it's interconnected. It really is.
Oh, definitely.
And I can't imagine that there is anybody in the area that wouldn't go into the museum and find a connection from
there's something.
Relative in the past, or a family member, or a friend's family member, and just with so many different artifacts there. And as you mentioned, you've got the Sandy Point connection, you've got the French connection, the Indigenous connection, the military connection, all of these under the one roof. I'm sure that everybody that goes in there can connect with something.
Yeah.
No, it is, especially when they start looking at some of the family names and some of the maps.
Mm-hmm.
And we've actually made people came in and we connected them. And people who came here whose parents were at Harmon. One young lady came in, she said, I was born here on the base. And we left when I was 3, and I always wanted to come back, and that was her moment to come back.
So, and this is what I'm thinking, too. For a lot of people who are coming here as tourists, they may have had their parents met on the base.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they may have been born here on the base, or they may have just, their mom or dad might be from here, married and went off to the U.S. Now they're here visiting.
That happened a lot.
Yeah.
Well, the one that Linda was talking about, the NCO in his dress uniform and the bride, 25,000 Newfoundlanders married servicemen. Okay,
wow.
So that was
an
impact. That was a lot.
That's an interesting fact in itself.
Okay.
Wow. So if somebody does want to get involved with volunteering, who do they reach out to? How do they go about getting involved?
On our brochure, there's an email address, or somebody can call me, or Maurice. Everybody knows Maurice. A lot of people know me.
Yeah. Or I guess they can probably just pop into the museum at any given time, leave their name. If one of you are not there, leave it with one of the tour guides.
Yes, and I'll definitely get in touch with them.
Excellent.
Well, we've got a fine group, and everybody gets along well, and we have a lot of fun.
How many volunteers do you have right now?
Probably about
a dozen.
At least, probably about 14.
Okay.
Yeah, about 14.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, it certainly does take a lot of work, and a lot of work even just to keep it going and to add to it.
We're trying to get more information on Stephenville in the past, like past businesses that were here. And I mean, there's been so many over the years that have come and gone. And every now and then I discover one. I say, I didn't know that was a business in Stephenville. Yeah. So we're trying to get a compilation of that put together as well. Anybody out there got any information?
Yes.
Exactly. So if anybody knows anything, get in contact.
A lot of the stores were ran by people of Jewish descent.
Yeah.
There was the Irvings, the Resnicks, Swartz. My mom and dad had an apartment. I'll tell you a little story. And there was a couple there. They may have been in their 30s, but we used to call them aunt and uncle. And as she was serving me, she was giving me some cookies. And I said, "You've got numbers on your arm."
Oh.
And in my head, I sort of had an idea what it was. And she called her husband over, and he said, "I do too." Both of them had survived Auschwitz.
Wow.
So there was that other part of the story of the groups that came through Stephenville at the end of the war. Then after the war in China, a large Chinese community. Yeah. And then we hit the people who were getting out of Germany, the German families that came, and some Hungarian families. So it was... Stephenville became more of an international community than most others. Yeah.
So, Maurice, I think you're going to be back wearing a different hat the next time, because I think we're going to have to do a podcast on the history of Stephenville and get some of these stories documented that you have. For sure. Before we sign off for the day, is there anything either of you would like to
people have bumped into people say, "I got to go to the museum. I got to go to the museum." Do it. Come and go to the museum and bring some of your friends. There's interesting stories, and then they have some interesting stories to tell us as well.
Absolutely. And I've got some family coming to visit next week, so I'm going to be bringing them along to the museum for a visit. I can tell you.
Actually, last summer, I'm going to add this. Yeah. Last summer was our biggest summer yet. We had that many visitors. It was unbelievable.
How many visitors do you generally get in the run of a summer, do you think?
We might get 200, but last year we were well over 400.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were more than double.
Wow. And that's actually good, because even with... a couple of years of COVID and people were just starting to really get back traveling last summer. So the fact that you got 400 people pass through the doors last summer is amazing.
Yeah.
I think part of them coming to visit is you talk about Sandy Point and they go, "Where is Sandy Point?" Mm-hmm. You talk about Billett, where is that place on the Cape? Mm-hmm. And it sparks them to go visit other places.
Exactly. So they can come in and see all these artifacts and talk to everyone whoever's there at the time. And like you said, it sparks an interest. Well, this is somewhere I'd like to see, and how do I get there? And next thing you know, you're sending them off to another location.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sharing the wealth.
Exactly.
And the information, of course. Well, thank you guys very much. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, when we first started, Maurice Hynes and Linda Collier have been here with me on another edition of our Town Talk, and we are going to encourage everybody out there, residents, visitors, people from surrounding communities, head on out to the Stephenville Regional Museum at some point during the summer. As you mentioned, you're open 7 days a week.
Yeah.
What about on holidays? Are you generally closed on holidays or?
Well, not until the end of August.
Not until the end of August. It'll be 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So perfect. So we're going to encourage everybody to take some time and maybe make a trip, if not two.
Yeah.
And because for sure, I find when you go somewhere, sometimes when you go back that second time, you will always pick up on something that you didn't notice the first time around. Because the first time, I think you're just so enthralled with everything and just so amazed that it takes that second or third trip until you actually get to see everything and get a good appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys very much for coming in. And you've been listening to Town Talk here, another podcast brought to you by the town of Stephenville.
Thank you.